Hello and welcome to Higher Computing Science, Database Design and Development Lesson 1. Before we get into higher databases, make sure you've checked out all the videos on National 5 databases on this channel, because I'm going to assume that you just know all of this already. So don't skip ahead, make sure you've checked these out. If you have already watched them, you'll recognise a lot of this because it is just a continuation of analysis from National 5. It's more of the same. And you'll remember that before designing a database, you have to figure out what it should be capable of. And there's two things we need to figure out. What should the users be able to do with the database? What should the database do and be able to do? These are known as end user requirements and functional requirements. And the whole point of figuring this out, well, it helps clarify the design. It makes it a lot easier to design the database. It helps you identify the features that you need to implement. And later on, you can figure out whether you've been successful by evaluating whether the system you create is fit for purpose. Now, I've got an example here, and you'll know that this is a valid example because I've stolen it from the SQA. Look, it's publicly available, so it's not theft. This is from the Higher Computing Science course specification. It's in there. It's page 81 that it starts on. Here's the worked example. So let's go over it. A travel agency, they want a relational database to store details of bookings for hotels and Scottish holiday resorts, and it will allow travel agents to view the details of hotels and make bookings for customers. It mentions 4 separate entities. Now, what are entities? This is something we maybe need to speak about. At National 5 level, we spoke about things like records, fields, tables, these types of things. At higher level, we've got new terminology. Now, these are the technical terms that are used in the industry, the database industry, the computing industry. So an entity is a table, an entity occurrence is a record, an attribute is a field. Everything else you'll probably be aware of other than possibly cardinality, which we'll speak about later, and entity occurrence diagrams will be new, but you should be aware of entity relationship diagrams. Remember, ER diagrams are how you describe the relationship between tables. So entity relationship, table relationship. That's how you can remember that entity is a table, sorry. The rest of it, I'm probably going to switch between the National 5 terminology and the higher terminology. So I do apologize in advance, but refer back to this if you ever forget what any of the terms mean, and I'll try and stick to the higher terms. But going back to the example, it mentions 4 separate entities, so 4 separate tables. We've got the hotel entity, the resort entity, the customer entity, and the booking entity. You can see what these are going to store. And the travel agency, they've appointed a developer team they're going to analyze the database requirements. In other words, we are the database team, the developer team. Now, as part of the analysis, what you would do is you would interview the people who are asking for the database. These are the clients. You would ask the clients some questions, and you would ask the people who are going to eventually use the database, the end users. Ask them some questions. What do you want the database to do? What do you want to be doing in using this database? So here are some of the answers when we, the developer team, ask those questions. I have to prepare invoices for customers to show the full details of their booking. It should include the hotel and resort name, the date, price per person, the number of nights, number in the party, the total cost, customer name and full address, as well as the total cost of the booking. Someone said customers are interested to know how many 4-star hotels are in resorts that have train stations. Customers often want to visit a particular resort and ask me to check the availability of hotels with facilities, for example, a pool or with different meal plans. One person needs to know what hotels are available for a given date, for example at the start of a season, or within a certain price range. Another member of staff needs to provide customers with details of hotels in different types of resorts, for example coastal or country. Customers expect to be given the information about hotels that have specific star rating. They want to calculate the total cost of a stay in those hotels for a specified number of nights and a certain number of people in the party. And customers want to see hotel details together with resort information listed from cheapest to dearest. And within all of these responses, there's a lot of information about the entities required, the attributes that each entity requires, so the fields required in each table, as well as the queries that are required. There's lots of information about queries here. And it also gives us hints as to the type of data that's being stored in these tables, these entities. So here's the answers. Here we go. End user requirements. So the end users are the staff, the people who work for the travel agency. They should be able to perform a range of searches to display the full details of any booking, availability of hotels in particular resort with specified facilities, meal plans or pools, details of hotels in particular types of resort, and so on. You can read this. But you might be wondering, where did we get all this information from? All of it was in these answers. All of these answers provided this information. When it comes to end user requirements, You should be talking about what the users want to be able to do. Travel agency staff should be able to perform. So you could replace travel agency staff with the end users should be able to perform. It's the same for every single question in an exam or task in an assignment. End users of the database should be able to perform a range of searches, and you list the searches, and they should be able to perform some sorts and list those sorts. So it's all queries here. We're mentioning all queries for end user requirements. Now, there are different types of queries. Some of them are to search, some are to sort, some are to insert, and some are to delete, and some are to update. But you could mention all of that as long as it was mentioned in the end user's responses here. So in the survey or the questionnaire or the interview, whatever it is that gives you the information, as long as they mentioned it here, you can mention it as end user requirements. And the same goes for functional requirements, but this time it's about the database and what it will do. So you should mention the entities. This should say entities. Right, I fixed it. Entities, hotel, resort, booking, and customer. But we already knew that. But what else do these... Right, I fixed the whole thing. What else do these entities require? Which attributes do they require? Well, they require primary key attributes and foreign keys. The foreign keys link the entities. And in addition to the primary and foreign keys, we need other attributes. So we've got lots of stuff. And all of these were mentioned in those responses. Now, it may transpire that this isn't enough when it comes to making the database, but in reality, what would happen is you as the developer would speak to the client, the person asking for this database, and you would say, okay, we have these entities, I've listed these attributes, is this what you're looking for? And you would explain how it would work. And they would say, yeah, that sounds perfect. Or they might say, actually, I need a bit more information in some of these tables, entities. We need more attributes, something along those lines. And you would both agree as to what would go in these tables. And you would also mention the queries that are required and any calculations and any, we've got special words here, aggregate functions. So again, this is all just relating to queries. So we need simple and complex queries to search. We need some queries to sort. We need a calculation. And we've got aggregate functions here, which we're going to learn about more of in the implementation section. Now, again, all of this came from the SQA. In their worked example document, it's part of the course specification. We can see we've got the same responses and we've got the same answers. I just presented it in a nicer way. Haha. So now that you've learned how to create the functional requirements and the user requirements based off a sort of conversation with a client, how about you give it a go and we'll go over this one in the next video. A dog walking agency requires a new database to store information on the dog walkers they employ, the dogs that get walked, the owners of the dogs, and the different walks that the dogs are taken on. The agency manager was interviewed and this is what they had to say. Now I'm not going to read all of this out to you because hopefully you can all read. Pause the video. Give it a read and attempt to come up with the user requirements and the functional requirements. And in the next video, I'll go over my answers to this question. And hopefully you'll all be successful. I'll see you in the next one.